Hello, today the lecture on 3 topics that should be touched in business research methods. One we already have touched a little bit, actually 2. Hierarchical linear modeling, hierarchical regression, we have touched when we were speaking about regression. Conjoint analysis is not a purely statistical method, but it's often used in marketing and business, so you should know about it. And with text analytics, we were touching when we were speaking about qualitative research. But with this text analytics, I want to go in a software, particularly offered at TU Berlin, because a TU Berlin startup brought it on the market, and it's one of the dominating text analytics softwares on a global scale, one can say. Hierarchical regression. Remember, regression, we have dependent and independent variable. Let it be the time you invest in learning and the result. So that would be a simple regression. I ask 100 students and I have 100 points in this diagram, and I can throw a line through these points which resembles the shortest distances. That's roughly what we do with a regression. Hierarchical regression, it's based on the assumptions that we have several levels. Just imagine a school. Could also be a university, but a school. At a school we have these school kids on an individual level. So school kids are grouped in classes, in school classes. Then you have different types of schools. So you can imagine that there are actually 3 levels: the individual level, the group level, and the school level. And we have to take care of that, because the individual behavior and the success and the grades of this individuum, the school pupils, the kids, can be depending on the individual level, on whatever capabilities someone has, whatever interest someone has. It can be depending on the peers around the group, and it can be depending on the didactical pedagogic concept of the entire school or the size of the school. So there are several levels, and you can go on. I mean, that's in a federal country, and you know, in Germany we have very different systems in federal countries. So that's the next level, then Germany is the next level, and maybe Europe is the next level. So there are levels, and you have them also a lot in business research. In business research you have the employee. The employee is part of a team. The team is part of the department. The department is part of an entire enterprise. The enterprise is part of an economic system in Germany or Europe. So you have several levels. And for that we use hierarchical linear modeling. That's also a software which can be downloaded for free for students in a limited version, but this limited version is actually sufficient to do quite serious research in statistical analytics. It's actually the same as a regression, but it adds an error term in the regression formula for every level, so that we can control what we find on the individual level. It's not different on any higher levels. So if you spend a lot of time in learning and you expect a better grade, that's one, let's say, correlation or regression we can calculate. Then we find, of course, when you spend more time in learning, you have better grades. Then we can control, is it depending in a group? Is it depending on a school, or is it depending on a federal country? Or is it different, that maybe someone who spends more time in learning gets a better grade in TU Berlin, but doesn't get a better grade at HU Berlin Humboldt University? So that all we can control when we do that. Here an example we did when we were speaking about social entrepreneurship. I mean, it's rather unclear how to define social entrepreneurship. Is it purely, let's say, on a social side without a commercial point of view, without revenues and profits? Or do we speak about social entrepreneurs as profit maximizing, but having a vision and a strategy to have a social impact? Can be both. I don't want to discuss that, but you actually can distinguish that. When you do research on social entrepreneurship, we at least have a second layer when we examines these enterprises where we have to distinguish between several kinds of enterprises: pure charities, hybrid organizations, and profit-driven organizations. And all can have different impacts, and all are organized differently, and all have a different business model. So we have to make this distinction. We cannot just say we are researching social entrepreneurs. Then we can formulate some hypotheses. I don't want to go into the single hypothesis. And this research we did here, and you find the article on ISIS, you see that we took the social networks of social enterprises as explanatory independent variables to actually predict and explain their impacts on different levels. And of course, that could be different for the three types of social enterprises: charities, hybrid, or profit-driven. So we have to take care of that. Taking together all these network variables, we label that social capital, as it is usually done. Then you come with a simple regression analysis where you actually see that social value creation in whatever kind is depending on some network variables and some control variables. And we look whether on a group level, this three kind of charity, hybrid, profit-driven makes a difference when we research that. And that's displayed in this table. It's a normal, you can interpret it as a normal regression. You see the regression coefficient, so you see the standard variances behind in brackets, and you see the level of testing, the p-value where we have a threshold in 501%. You see that's network quality, the intensity of contacts, quantity, how many contacts you have, and how far the contacts are, have all a positive effect on direct beneficiaries, how many people you address, results tangibility, how intensive people are addressed, the extent of transformation, how much change is realized. So actually social capital can be said is positive on the impact. But does it have a differences in the three categories or the three types: charity, hybrid, or profit-driven? Yes. With respect to result tangibility, that's different with the three types because the group level variance is significant, and it's also different when we look at the extent of transformation. So we have to go deeper into that. We cannot just take the sample of social enterprises without looking at several facets. And the same results you see when we go to potential expansion or the adaptability as impact variables. It's different for the three groups. So when you have differences, when you have different classes, different schools, different universities, and in companies, different departments, different teams, you have to go into hierarchical linear modeling when you want to make it really correct. And keep in mind that a sample in business administration always has a kind of hierarchical structure, individual level, team level, also on the startup level. As you can see with the social enterprises, there are different types. So hierarchical linear modeling, you should keep it in mind. You can download it. It's a software package which can be used for students for free with some limitations. But keep in mind, when you do research, when you read research or you write your master thesis, that's something you should apply. Coming to the next, conjoint analysis. It's completely a different story. Conjoint analysis is done mostly in market research to find out the preferences of customers. And that's often done with market research institutes on the street, or they invite customers, users to fill in questionnaires and to calculate that. Let's take this as an example. You have the three kind of mobile phones and that have a certain size, that have a certain color, that have a certain price. And of course, you can attribute some preferences to it. Of course, you want to have it cheap. You want to, I don't know if you want to have it big or small, and I don't know about the color, but if you ask enough customers, you can actually get a profile of customers. You can even go into customers, the age of customers, the interest of customers. You can do much more, and for that you actually need conjoint analysis. Where you can actually go in detail, what's the preference of customers as done here. And you can actually develop a profile of a product and define requirements for the product before you actually start developing, because you know the preferences in color or in others. You will be surprised how, for instance, color can have an impact on the decision to buy a product or not. There is a huge differences in the individual preferences, and companies just get that for their product development efforts. So, and next to the preferences, you can also add the importance of these preferences. And you see that the data included seems to be most important when it comes to mobile phones. The price is important. And SMS, I don't think that SMS is anymore so important, but international minutes included are not so important. So you can actually make contract, provision contract for mobile phones and the mobile phone in a way that you offer it to customers, showing the most preferred aspects of a mobile phone. You see, you can go really into detail, and for that, doing that, and that might be important later when you go into marketing or market research, even in your master thesis. Every decent software package, as for instance the most easiest one, SPSS, includes a conjoint analysis package, so you can do it and you can design questionnaires like that, and you can actually calculate it on the preference level. The last I want to introduce to today's lecture is the qualitative analysis with Atlas TI. Atlas TI is a startup from our university, from TU Berlin. It's one of the most prominent software for text analytics. There's a lot of small features, videos that explain you every detail. So when you want to learn that, you can do that. You also can get a free license at our university when you want to work with Atlas TI. You remember, actually, what we need in text analytics is to sort and handle data. I mean, you have done a lot of interviews, and then you have hundreds of hours maybe of text, and you put it on a paper, then you transcribe it. But what to do that? In the first instance, actually, after you have this transcript, you have to code the data, and then you have to work out concepts on a more general level. And for that all, software is actually quite usable. And actually you should use software when doing that, particularly when you have many interviews, to get grip on the data. I mean, the coding should be done maybe with software support from different coders, so that you get a triangulation into that. But the concepts from these codes can be worked out based on software quite easily. So you see, you have the transcript, you make it roughly, and then you actually code it. And next to the codes, you develop concepts. And that's the way where you can see how Atlas TI works. It helps you to get the relationship between the concepts, to also get the social networks of those concepts, what's most central, what's least central. And you can through it over all the interviews, and you get quite sense-making information out of it. I mean, doing qualitative research means doing it so long and gathering so many data as no new information appears anymore. If you have asked so many people, no new information appears anymore, you have a saturated sample of qualitative research, and you can actually display it and analyze it with Atlas TI quite easily. At the end, using the software packages always helps. So I would really stimulate for you to use the software packages in statistics for qualitative research, for hierarchical linear modeling, also for machine learning using Python, so that you actually have enough support and you're not working with this mess of data we have nowadays with a pen and a sheet of paper. That does not work anymore. Just use the software introduced here at the Bordeaux Business Research Methods. Thanks a lot.